Hey guys, in this video we've got the Kronos XTR 2022 from Team Corrali, and this one is a roller. You know, when they first hit the market, we tried to get a hold of one of these things, and the RTR I couldn't get one in the studio. I couldn't do it. I tried and tried, could not get one. Okay, so we kind of gave up on it at that point. I was in the hobby store the other day and asked them to see if they could get them. When they pulled it up right across the top, it said discontinued on the RTR, which makes sense as to why we just couldn't get one in. Even though we had paid for the pre-order, we never got one. So they did discover this new roller, and the roller we could get. So look what's on the bench, guys. There it is. That's the roller for the Kronos XTR. This is the one with all the cool stuff in it. In this video, we're going to get it out of the box. We're going to show you what we're going to install. We're going to take it out and we're going to test it, and we're going to test this thing proper. When we're done with that, we'll bring it back in, show you what happened, and then we'll ask our 4 questions. Is it fun? Is it durable? Is it worth the money? And where does it stack up in our collection? You know, I've heard good things about this one, guys. Check this out. Okay, let's get this thing out of the box. Oh, man, every time. Okay. Nice. Oh, hey, look at that. An extra body. That is awesome. Okay, so there it is. So since this doesn't have any of the electronics, it comes with a simple packet here. And let's see what's inside of it. There we go. Okay. So it looks like we've got an aerial, an extra pinion, and some lanyards and hood clips for the body. So that's cool. We've got some masking for the windows on the body. We've got the manual here. And then 2 sets of decals. Nice. I assume the one with red are for the clear body, and the orange ones, which are missing some of them, are for this one. So that should be pretty cool. Easy to understand there. Let's have a quick look at the quick start guide and see what we've got here. Now, we haven't had a Corrali in here yet, so this is fresh to us too. But just leafing through it here, you can see that each thing is diagrammed really well to help you learn setup on the car and how the parts go together. It looks like a pretty good manual. We're going to have to dig through this a little closer, but it does have the explode with all of the part numbers, and as long as it took us to get this car, I'm curious as to how long it'll take to get parts. When this first came out, like I said before, we'd ordered one right away, and we only just now got it, which is months and months later. So it'll be curious to see if we can actually get the parts in a timely manner. It looks like a pretty good build on this situation. So that's what comes with it, considering it doesn't have any electronics. That's to be expected. All right, alongside that, this is what we've elected to put into the car here, and we are going to use the DX5C for our control module. We have an SR215. This is a simple 2-channel radio, steering and throttle. Should be all we need for that. We have a BLX 185 speed control, and this is brand new, along with the 2050 motor, and this is the BLX as well. These two are a really good component set, and we use these in most of our 8th scale basher stuff. So this will put it right in the level playing field with the other ones so we can get a good evaluation. We are going to run a 17 tooth pinion on it, and we have a VTEC 35 kilogram servo to go in there for steering. And this is the component set that we are going to add to the car. All right, so that being said, let's get the body off this thing and have a look inside. Okay, pretty straightforward on the body, and that has some substantial bracing in it. Interesting layout. The suspension feels pretty good, nice and smooth. The arms look good and solid, so if you take a look at the arms are really solid down in here. There's not a whole lot of spacing. It looks really, really stiff in there. It does have a 7075 aluminum chassis, and it's nice and wide, which I am a fan of. Looks like it's got a good brace up top here for the body to protect it for impact, and there is a real serious brace across the middle, which ties into these aluminum braces right off the bat. It already has aluminum front and rear here. There is a carbon fiber strip that runs down underneath that for rigidity across here. And this is just first look stuff, guys. This is just like getting it out of the box and having our initial look at it. And it really looks substantial. The wing mounts, the way they tie in back here, it's all one piece from the shock tower all the way down. So if you can see down in here, this attaches to the chassis and straight to the shock tower. So there's technically 1, 2, 3, 4 braces just in the rear end. That's pretty impressive too. These look like Outcast tires. They've got the same basic tread design, but they feel a lot softer than the Outcast tires. So it'll be interesting to see how these hold up in that respect. If you take a look at the front here, you can see right down in here, these hub carriers here look a little more significant than, say, their Arma brothers, the ones that, you know, they seem to pop out a lot. These have a lot more build around the inside, so they should capture those balls a lot better. We did have failings in the other ones. So the Corrali one looks a little bit more substantial. Actually, taking a look at the sway bar here, it looks pretty impressive as well, and I like the centering collar here to keep it from drifting. So that'll keep it right in the middle. That's a nice touch as well. The front bumper is small. I don't know if I'm a fan of that, but the nice thing about that is when you come down this way, the tires hit first. So if you hit under throttle, you can pull your car out and get it to land on its wheels. Okay, so that's what you get in the box. You know, we're just going to do a high-speed assembly for this. We're not going to do like a tutorial on how to put this all in. We've done this before with other vehicles, and it looks pretty much the same. So we're going to go ahead and roll through that for time constraints, just to keep this as short as we can. We have a lot to get through before we're done. So enjoy the montage of assembly, and then we'll get after it. Check this out. Okay guys, so there's the build for the XTR. You know, it was not so straightforward. The speed control didn't want to go in properly and I had to put a bracket underneath it to hold it. That was a pretty simple fix. Everything else went in pretty well. The servo was a little tall. I had to put a spacer in it. Other than that, it was a pretty straightforward install. And instead of using the 17-tooth pinion out of the box, we used the pinion they provided to see how this thing is supposed to act right out of the box. And we'll just see what that does. We do have the 17 to try later after we get this done. So there you go. That's the build. That leaves one thing left, guys. Oh, by the way, the sync went nice and straight. We just had to reverse the action on the speed control to get everything to work properly. Pull the trigger brakes, not a good thing. Quick reverse, everything's all up and running. Everything's synced up and good to go. So, like I say, there's only one thing left to do. Let's take this thing out and test it. See if it's everything they say it should be. Check this out. Okay guys, so there's the running footage for the Kronos XTR 2022 from Team Corrali, and this is a really cool car, but it's not quite perfect. Now this one here, it was the roller, and I really appreciate that because that gives me the opportunity to set it up like most of the other 8-scale bashers that we have, and that allows us to see how it performs in respect to those other cars in the same platform. And it handles really well. It does do good, but like I say, it's not perfect. It does have a few things. And one, the tires were pretty well out of balance when we got it, and you saw in the rev test that it did dance across the table and it was pretty out of balance. However, once we got it on the ground and started playing with it, we really couldn't tell that much. It handled pretty well once under load, and that worked really well. We did go through 3 different sets of tires on this just to see how it performs. We used the Creighton tires for the 6S platform, and we used the Fireteam tires, and all 3 sets, even the original ones, handled admirably. And add to that, the extra hardware they have inside for strength and stability makes for a really durable rig. This holds up good, but it does have a failing, and it is, it's one of these things to where you wonder why they did it, and what it comes down to is, and I'll get you a close-up of this, but right down in here in the steering links, and let's pull this up for you so you can see, right in the steering links here, these have an angled bracket there, and that angled bracket, it looks like it's in there to clear the wheels, but when you crank the wheels, take a look at this, there's lots of room in there, so having that angled bracket in there, the connecting point, basically the end point to the steering link, having that angled one in there makes very little sense, and when you put any kind of pressure against it, it bends at the angle, and we broke both of them on the first battery. Now it wasn't one of them was a pretty good impact, the other one was just basic bashing, and it still didn't hold up the way it was supposed to. So we replaced them with straight ones, and the straight ones will take the impact without imparting it to the bent portion, and it doesn't get anywhere near the wheels. So it's not like you have to have that clearance for the wheels or anything. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense that they would put that angled piece in there, and unlike some of the ARMA cars where they do have the angled piece out at the end of those steering links, those are webbed and they're a lot stronger. These are just a simple straight plastic piece that's bent at the end. And so every time you put pressure against it, it bends it till it breaks, and that's not a good thing. Okay, alongside that, we had a problem with the battery tray, and that's kind of an interesting thing here. So the battery tray here is pretty simple and straightforward, but out of the package, it only comes with 2 straps here. Now, these 2 straps, they go through it in a unique way as they tuck down through all the slots and stuff in the tray, and it tore both of them under standard, it wasn't even high-powered impact, just standard jumping, and it spit the battery out, and it tore both of these. And I took it apart and took a look at it, and I found out why that is. It is a molded piece, and the edges are sharp where the actual strap goes through, so I had to file those a little bit and get the edging off. I added a long strap here, so the long one go in this direction. I like having those, so I added one of those, and I added a center strap, and once I did that, the batteries don't move anymore. So with the steering link end being a problem, and the battery spitting out on it, those 2 items are pretty much most of what we had issues with. All of the components that we added to the car work good, but there's one more thing. The gearing that comes in the box with the 2050 motor, the 185 BLX speed control, they get pretty hot, guys. They do, running on 6S or 4S, and we ran both. They get pretty hot. So it seems to be a little high geared, and I'm not sure if that's a speed gear that came with it, but it's the one that came in the box. You would expect it to work without overheating your gear. So if you're going to use the one in the box, I highly recommend a fan for the motor because it does reach some pretty high temperatures. All right, so with that being said, it's time to get on with our 4 questions. And if you watch the channel, you know what they are. Is it fun? Is it durable? Is it worth the money? And where does this car stack up in our collection? You know, this was a highly anticipated car for the channel. It really was. And we wanted to get one as soon as possible. But being unable to get one, it really kind of disheartened us towards the Corrali brand. because we just couldn't get the cars everyone was talking about. Now that we've actually had one, the XTR is a really cool car and it is tough. Now, out of the box, we've got some of that, and we'll cover that in question number 2. But first, let's get on. Question number 1. Is this thing fun? Well, yeah, it's tough, it's fun, it's fast, and it does as advertised. If you put good gear in it, being as this is a roller, you get to select what you put in it. With the standard gear in it, the stuff that runs in all the other ones, it is a blast to play with. It's really controllable at 4S, and it's still a lot of fun. It's not quite as quick and snappy as 6S, but it's still a blast to play with and highly controllable. It really is. At 6S, this is just about as off the chain as some of the others, but not quite. And what I mean by that is with the same running gear, with the same motor speed control, you know, the differentials, the spur gears and everything, the gearing is about the same, but this one doesn't seem to have the snap that the others have. Even the Fire Team has a little more get up and get with it over this one, and it could be the running gear, but at the same time, the Traxxas Sledge is unmatched as far as brutal out of the box power goes. This one is very good, don't get me wrong, and I know I picked the electronics, so I can't fault it for that, but at the same time, we're talking about fun here. The Sledge itself is a little too off the chain for me out of the box because it's hard to keep the front wheels down. If you're stunting, it's awesome. This one here is a bit more controllable, and it goes just everywhere you want it to, but once you get these pieces fixed, and of course, these are the steering links, and they are bent from the factory. It has this little angle piece to it. I don't know if you can see that, but it has that little angle to it. When you put stress on it, it bends at the angle and snaps them off. So twice we went out and had to come back broken because those were an issue. So that was 2 trips out, 1 for each brake. And then of course it spit the battery out and tore those, so we had to replace parts to make that work. But once we got past that, it did absolutely everything we wanted to. Is the car fun? Absolutely, it is fun once you get those minor things replaced on it. No car's perfect, but this one is darn close, guys. For fun, I'm going to give this one 8 out of 10 for fun because we did have some issues. They were easy to solve, and we did have a good time with it. So 8 out of 10 for fun. And question number 2, is this thing durable? Well, is it? Well, if you take a real good look at the car itself, it's built like a tank. It really is. The arms are tough. The chassis is made out of the good aluminum. It's got more chassis braces in it than any other car that I've got on the shelves here right now. And all of the running gear held up beautifully. It does have a couple of small weaknesses. The battery tray, which you don't run into that one very often, but the battery tray needs addressing right out of the box. And of course the steering links, they're a weak point in the car, but both of those are so easy to fix and so low cost to replace. I'm not really going to fault it all that much for those two because the main running gear of the car, the main structure of the car, from the bumper to the body shell all the way down to the arms to the actual gearing and all that stuff, everything held up beautifully. So it's a super tough truck. Now if you kind of stack these up with the other 6S bashers that we have in store, and what I'm talking about basically is like the Creighton 6S, the EXB, the Italian 6S, the Fire Team, the Sledge, all of those kind of fall into this category as for 6S flat chassis cars. And as far as durability goes, there's 2 that really sing, that hold up extremely well without any modifications, and this includes the EXBs from Arrma. This one right here and the Sledge are the 2 toughest out of the box bashers that we've gotten so far. That doesn't really discredit Arrma, but you have to put a bunch of parts into those to get that durability that is inherent with this one and the Sledge. Those 2 out of the box are some of the toughest components that work well together. And so as far as durability goes, since we did have some minor failings and we did have to fix them in field, we're going to give this 9 out of 10 for durability, because you can't give a perfect score to a car that didn't get a perfect score. So 9 out of 10 for durability. And question number 3, is this thing worth the money? Well, that's kind of an interesting question because it depends on your finances and what you can afford and what you're willing to put into the car. Now, this is no longer an RTR. Like I said, I went to the hobby store. They had a look. You can't get the RTR anymore. It's discontinued. I didn't find out why, but they no longer carry the RTR, but you can get the roller, which kind of makes sense to me. I'm kind of wondering if maybe the microchip shortage and that kind of stuff makes getting the electronics harder to get for them. I don't know for sure, but that kind of does make sense if that's the deal. Now you can buy the car without the electronics. They still have all that in stock. Bam, there's the roller chassis and it's all good. However, for the cost, this wasn't overly expensive, but I haven't tried to get parts for it yet either, so we'll see how that works. For me, I was really excited to see what this one will do. I've heard good things and I've seen some pretty cool stuff with this car, and I wanted to see if it was true, and it is. This is a really brutal car. If you don't mind wrenching, if you don't mind buying the extra components, the ones that you want to put in it, you can personalize this one right out of the box without having to cannibalize what's already in there. This one, you pick your servo, you pick your radio, you pick your motor and speed control, assemble it, and you're good to go in the car that you wanted to have in the first place. If that means something to you, it's definitely worth the money because you're going to have to think about what you're going to have for torque, what you're going to have for battery components and all that stuff, and assemble it so that it performs the way you want it to, which is really nice to be able to do that. You can always go back and look at the original RTR specs, what they put out initially for this car, and buy components that are within that specification to get the exact feel and handling of the RTR that they were putting out to begin with. So for me, I think it was worth the money. I'm going to give this one, since you have to build it, I'm going to give this one 8 out of 10 for value, because you do have to invest in it somewhat, but you don't have to buy the upgrades that you have to buy with some of the other ones, so it makes it a good value if you look at it that way. Again, this is your choice. Is it worth it to you? And that's the important thing. So for me, 8 out of 10 for value. So that brings us up to question number 4. Where does this stack up in our collection? And you know, we've got a pretty wide selection of vehicles in here, and our top 10 is getting harder and harder to get into. However, this really does ring true for us that this is what we enjoy the most. Even out of all the different cars we have, it's the bashing community that really sings for us. You know, we've done our share of racing, we've done our share of on-road and all that stuff, but going out into nature and just piling into stuff with these cars, that's where at least my heart is at, and I really enjoy that. And this drops right into that category. So this car, guys, is going to wind up in 8th place, and it's going to bump a couple down, but it's right behind the Italian XL in our list. So holding down number 8, the newest car to the channel, the Kronos XTR 2022. Hey guys, this is where I usually ask you to subscribe, like, and share, but we're going to switch that up a little bit here, and we're just going to ask you to bash that like button. You know, the like button, it has a lot more to it than people realize. It helps our content grow. It helps it spread to other people. Subscribe if you like, but please, if you can, hit that like button, because that's what helps the most. You know, if you guys have one of these Kronos XTRs and you've done some cool things or have a pretty cool setup in it, or if you found anything wrong with yours, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below and help others along the way. Hey guys, for AJ Jam Studios, I'm AJ saying, keep bashing, guys.